Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to this edition of Lair Confidential on lairmedia.tv. And good evening, Martina Cleary, and welcome, Dr. Martina Cleary. Welcome.
Hi, Pat.
And it's important. It's important, I think, to give people their titles that they earned.
Thank you. Yeah, it was certainly hard earned.
There you go. Now, I met Martina a couple of weeks ago at a public meeting in the Oakwood Arms on the Clare Pyrite Action Group. And I must say, it opened my eyes because the only information I know about this is, Donegal seemed to have a great PR machine. So the Donegal Pyrite scheme was highlighted in RT. And so we all know what pyrite and all of that is and what it does to people. But they're another community that are completely, more or less, left to fend for themselves and pick up the pieces of. I don't know how you'd comprehend this. I don't know how I'd cope with it myself if it happened to me, Martina. I was at another meeting last night out in Meelick where they're talking about the monstrosities of a new proposed wind farm. So the community there is in the same boat, similarly, where they're left to their own devices. And I don't know what the story is. But anyway, Martina, your story first about your house and how it came about, and when did you notice these things in your house?
Okay, Pat, I suppose when you're talking about the wind farm there as well, what it's impacting, what's impacting us, the similarities would be the impact on your home, So there's nothing more important to us all. Those of us that are fortunate enough, and unfortunately it's a diminishing number in Ireland, but there are a number of us fortunate enough to have our own home to some extent. Most of us are still tied up with mortgages and everything, of course, but the security that you have of having a home, no matter how humble, it is your own place. And then when it's suddenly something happens to you that, it's totally beyond your control, it's beyond your own fault, and you're put into a situation where your home is actually under threat, under through no fault of your own, and your whole quality of life and everything that we associate with the home is threatened, it's destroyed, and with it goes the very foundation of not just your home, but your life, So my own story started, I suppose, in September 2020, really. It would have been the year before it. I was out, I was an avid gardener. Nothing as important to me as my lovely garden in the summer.
Absolutely.
And I just went around the corner of the house, was watering the baskets that were hanging on the gable, looked up, and suddenly there was a crack there. And I thought at the time, I was very naive, like most people, about anything to do with the house. You kind of buy the house. I bought my own house here. I'm in Crusheen, just outside Crusheen. I bought it in 2007. It wasn't, I didn't build it, so I bought it. Looked absolutely perfect at the time, had many happy years in it. Looking at 2019, look up at the gable wall and there's a very suspicious looking crack on it. And you're not talking about now with like a hairline crack, you're talking about a horizontal crack that was, 2 or 3 millimeters wide and quite shocking.
There was space in it.
There was space in it. You could put a coin into it, like, €2 coin. It was kind of wider than that. And of course, the first thought like you have is, well, why didn't I notice that? Like, where did that come from? But it was quite sudden,
Yeah.
So, and the immediate thing you do, like all of us do, go to Google. What causes cracking on the corner of my house?
The new builder Google, yeah.
The homegrown engineer.
Yeah.
So anyway, of course, the first thing I thought it might be subsidence. That's the first thing that comes up. So you get out your insurance company, you get out your engineer and the insurance company's engineer and looking at it and telling you it's one thing or the other, right? So that was the same situation with me. They told me it was something that it actually turned out it wasn't. But and I found that up and down the county when I did actually find out, when I was going out and talking to people in the seminar that had a similar experience, that their house basically had started cracking. They'd had an engineer out. The engineer told them it was this, that, and the other. They tried to repair it. Myself, I ended up wasting 6,000 trying to repair, like based on a misdiagnosis of what it was.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Well, an engineer came out.
Yeah.
Of course, that cost money. Inspected the crack.
Yeah.
And suggested at the end of the day you spend more money to get it repaired, which you did, I presume.
Oh yeah. And then that was like we were going into COVID then, COVID hit us all. It was around, I think, April.
Yeah, probably March, April of 2021. I know, well, we started a little business in February and March, April hit us on a exchange scale at a But anyway.
Yeah. So we're been to that. There was no builders, nothing available. So luckily we had a nice summer that year. We're all out in the garden. We were
it was a very nice summer. I agree with you there, yeah.
So anyway, I was waiting, that summer I got myself a polytunnel and I was delighted with myself. I was growing my own vegetables and I was happy out in my own little house. And I thought I was sorted. I had it as, and an engineer told me, Asher, you just put in a soak pit, you put in a few more pipes, you'll be grand. Thought it was water going in under the foundation or something that it caused. Because I live up near, obviously, Crusheen, I'm on the kind of edge of the burn and a lot of rock, and soil in between. And they'd presumed like it was just the land had slipped down a bit or something, causing the corner to go down. And, it was fixable. Like I thought it was a fixable thing. And God, like it's going to cost you a few thousand, but at least it was fixable. But then I started getting around that COVID summer when eventually the builders were coming back on. I had a few plasterers out and a few builders and they were looking at it and, they didn't say anything to me, but like there was a couple of now came up to the house and they looked at it and they said, we'll get back to you, and they never got back, right?
They ran away from it.
Yeah, but I didn't know why.
Yeah, but that's what happened, yeah.
Yeah, but they knew, but they weren't saying a word, So I just thought it was just the way, like maybe it was hard to get a builder or something. But anyway, eventually I got a lovely local man out. He was really, really good. But he was doing the work like that the engineer recommended. And I thought I was at the end of that. And the very last step of it, was the way it manifested at this stage now, what it looked like was there was a horizontal crack like on the gable wall. And then on that corresponding corner, there was a kind of a vertical crack towards about, a couple of inches in from the corner. And it was kind of snaking up a little bit, but it only been maybe about a foot, less than a foot high, the crack.
I think that's one of the photographs you showed during the presentation, was it?
Yeah. That's what was underneath it, like, But anyway, I had the groundwork done. I thought the last step now, and he thought the last step as well, like, was we just fill in the cracks. Like, the land is secured, the foundation secured, everything, we're good,
Right.
And he came out to me then and he had the hammer with him and he was getting ready for the plaster and he said, I'll just have a look at the block underneath the render. And he got down anyway and he hammered into the render and I was there with him on the day, like, because I thought I am curious, and he just stopped dead. He got in past the render and he just looked at it and he looked at me and I knew something. I was like looking at him, I said, what's wrong? I said, I'm not touching that. He said, you've got pyrite. I know, I didn't even know what pyrite was. He could have said that the wall was made of something.
Your body, yeah.
Turf. I didn't know what he was on about. And he said to me, I can't touch that. And like, of course, he said, look, you're going to have to get another engineer out there now. He said, I'm not touching that. Like he said, and I said to him, what is this? And he said, the block is bad, like, And he went off anyway, and I went in, of course, back to Google.
Pyrite.
And I typed, it was no longer subsidence, it was pyrite block.
40 blocks, yeah.
Bang. Donegal. The first, like, just a wave of images came up, and here I was looking at these horrific images from Donegal, and I just went into complete shock, as anybody would, and telling myself, oh, dear God, I couldn't have that. That thing's called mica. I've got pyrite. Can't be me. No, couldn't be me.
Yeah. Denial, yeah.
Denial, because you're sitting there, and I'm telling you, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I went straight into looking pyrite in the block, and then when I found pyrite over in the East Coast, pyrite remediation, pyrite underfloor heave, and like, I'm not an engineer, I'm just an ordinary person, but like, if you suspect like that you have this, you start looking, like, and you try to educate yourself as to what could be happening to my house, because you're trying to understand, what am I facing here? What are the consequences for me of this?
If this is right.
Yeah, and so like I've literally no sleep for 2 nights. Just
I'm asking, you're on your own, are you?
I'm on my own. Yeah, so like I pay my own mortgage.
Yeah, well, not. I don't mean it in a personal way. I mean that you had to chat to yourself about this.
Yeah, I had to chat to myself about this, and certainly my father would have been called, like my elderly father, like having a chat with him, going, "Have you ever heard about this? Like, have you ever?" Because
yes.
Try to talk to one of the men in the family anyway, like,
yes,
like,
yes.
What am I dealing with here? And he hadn't heard about it either. So like you're saying, well, Jesus, if I do have this, it's kind of like getting, you know, when you realize, I suppose, when you look at the houses in Donegal then and you see the trajectory of the damage, and you're going like, the first thought was like, oh dear God, if I do have this, is my house going to look like this in 3, 4, 5 years down the road, because it's going to become uninhabitable, and I'm paying a huge mortgage on this, and I can't afford to be paying a second mortgage, and like, what am I going to do? You know?
Yeah.
So I suppose the very first thing then I was looking to see, well, who can I speak to? Like, who has this that can advise me on this situation?
Yeah.
And I started, like, very quickly within the first couple of days, I found, you know, the activist groups, you know. I realized that, you know, at that time I thought it could be Mica, it could be Pyrite. I tried to contact somebody in Donegal. I tried to contact somebody in Mayo, and it was a woman in Mayo was the first one that actually picked up the phone to me. Just,
all right,
you know, she called back. I think I found a number on Facebook.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize the importance enough of these activist groups for people that are facing this, because there's no help out there, really.
No.
And, you know, like this woman, I'd left a message on some number from Facebook I found from the, yeah.
Martina, could I ask you, did you contact Clare County Council?
I would have, I suppose the very first thing had happened to me that day was the 1st of August. It was a bank holiday, August, and around the weekend, and literally, like, you're gone into a spin, like, you know, and you're trying to find somebody that'll tell you don't have this, there couldn't be this, you know, so that you know, that you can, your life can kind of go back to normal, like that. You're not suddenly, like, it's very much, as another, it's like your house been struck by fire or an earthquake or a flood. It happens like that. But it's a similar thing, because it's going to completely destroy your home, but it's just a slower process, you know. And like, you're kind of, it's almost like you're in suspended trauma over a long period of time, you know. But anyway, this woman got back to me, and she started telling me about her experience, and it was Pyrite in Mayo. And she said to me, she was very practical. Like, she said, do you know about this? Do you know about the expert panel? Do you know? And I knew nothing. I mean, I didn't even know about
How would you? You know, it's a different planet altogether, a different story.
Different planet. Yeah, they'd been fighting it. Like, I would subsequently discover, like, as I began to read more and discover more, that they'd have been fighting this, like, since 2012. It broke out up there, you know. So she said to me, she said, you need to get an IS 465 engineer. And I was like, what's an IS 465 engineer, you know? And so, like, then trying to find one of those, and I found there was only one of them at the time down in Limerick. And literally the minute everything was open up after the bank holiday, I called him. I think it was the 4th of August, and he was out to me by the 10th, and did the site visit, did the visual inspection, and told me pretty much on the day, I never forget it, he went around the house. He was here for about an hour, and they said, yeah, he said, looks bad. He said, it's bad. He said, I've got a bit of bad news for you. And he said, you've got suspected deleterious materials. That's what they called it. Like, and he said, it's either pyrite or mica in your house. And then he brought me around the outside, and he was showing me the signs of it, like the other signs that I know nobody that's a lay person would know.
No, but he did a thorough job, that chap that came out to you. He I won't say he put your mind at ease, but at least he confirmed how serious the problem was. Now, there's no consolation to you, obviously, but at least now you know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And the first human thought in my mind would be, how do I fix this?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
we're like, we were standing in the yard in my house, and I said, right, so what can I do?
Did he give you advice? Did he give you any advice or anything?
He said to me, he said, you can't fix it. He said, there's no fixing this. He said, all you can do is mitigate at the moment. And then he said to me, he said, you know that there's a similar problem both in Donegal and Mayo. And I said, yeah, I was hoping it wasn't the same thing here. And I said, he said, you can't fix it. He said, you've got no grant down here either. He said, there is a grant available to them up there. He said, but there's no grant. And I said to him, well, like what? I said, what do you recommend? Like what? He said, look, your house is going to decay. It's going to deteriorate. The blocks are crumbling inside the walls. And he said, like what exacerbates this is exposure to the rain. He said, so the first thing you need to do is fill up any of these cracks as soon as they open. He said, put in non-shrink grout, keep it as watertight as you possibly can for as long as you can. And I said, well, okay, like I said, is there anything else I can do? And he said, well, he said, it's very difficult to fix this, he said, because Well, obviously because he'd seen it before. I said, have you seen this before? And he said, oh yeah. He said, I've seen at least 50 houses in Clare and Limerick with this. And then, like, you're kind of going, right, I'm not, the first thought is like, okay, it's bad, but I'm not on my own here, right?
Okay.
Do you know? And like, I knew then, like, that it was an issue down here. And I said, well, what have these people done? He said, well, I know homes that they've taken off, for example, the gable wall. They'll take, and like, I didn't even know, like, I mean, how would any person know that there's two walls in your house? He started talking about outer and inner leaf, you know.
And I just say there, Martina,
yeah,
as it struck me, it's like doctors, like any professions, like if there's an outbreak of measles, they're obliged to tell people. If there's an outbreak of chickenpox, the engineers in Ireland knew, as he said to you, there's about 50 houses. He personally, he's only one engineer. Would there not be an obligation to let people know about this publicly? Because it's that they are the very people that signed off in those houses in the beginning. That same, not him personally, but that same group of people, professionals, engineers, they signed a certificate for the house, so it could be structurally sound and all of that. They surely have an obligation.
It gets way worse. It gets way worse.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that now in a minute.
Yeah.
You know, he was saying to me, he said to me, like, the first thing was, well, fill in all the cracks, you know, make it watertight. And I was like, imagining, okay, well, at that stage it was just the gable wall in the corner, and I thought, right, if there's rotten blocks in there, surely I get rid of the rotten blocks, that my house will be okay again. I said, can I just get rid of the rotten blocks? He said it was kind of hard to know, because you don't know where the rotten blocks are. Like, there could be
you don't. You have to assume they're all over the house.
Yeah. And he said, oh, I knew some people that take off the gable wall. And I think, okay, grand. Like, in your mind, you're kind of going, okay, solution, fix it. Take off and he said to me, there's an outer and inner wall. And he said, you take out the outer wall. And I said, well, how much is that going to cost me? He said, it could cost you maybe 35, 50 grand. I'm like, what? It's like, what? Like, what? You know, it's like suddenly you're told, like, your house is not only deteriorating,
Jesus,
it's nothing you can do, but you're faced with a 50 grand bill.
What about yourself? I mean, I don't even know how I cope. You know, I just I don't know. I can't know. How would I know? But yourself, then, did you start contacting people, other people in your predicament, locally or around, or asking around, or everything is left to the person in crisis.
Absolutely.
And you're not capable, not just thinking straight when you're in stress and trouble like that, you know.
Oh, were you going straight into crisis? Like, I went straight into crisis, because it is kind of like a car crash. I put it that way. You know, it hits you like that, and it's slow motion. You know, and it's everything that you thought. Like, everything goes with it, because you know, you're told, like, there's something rotten inside in your house that is going to cost you exorbitant amounts of money to try and fix it. That there's no help there for you. But actually there is up in 2 counties, you know, somewhere else, and you're kind of the media side is like, well, why is it not here? And then, of course, the natural thing is, who caused this? Who caused this? You know, like, why are there rotten blocks inside my house? Surely the person that's
how old is old is the house?
It was built in 1995, and I bought it in 2007. Yeah,
it's not even 30 years old.
No.
Next year.
Yeah. So, like, literally the first thought is, you know, I mean, I'm getting on in years though, like, I'm no spring chicken, and, you know, you're kind of thinking, well, where am I going with this? Like, I just about have paid off my mortgage, and it could be like my house is not only worth nothing anymore, but like there's part of the wall collapsing on it. And the other thing is, like, not knowing, you know, not understanding, like what is the mechanism, like what is happening. And like those first couple of weeks, I would lie in bed at night, unable to sleep with stress and worry, and listening to the sounds of the house. And then I started hearing it, like, because you don't listen to your house, like, nobody listens to their house.
No, you don't. No.
But you're kind of, if somebody tells you something wrong with the blocks, you're kind of wondering, well, if they're cracking up on that side, like, what's going on this side? And then you can actually hear the blocks cracking, and and I thought, am I going mad here?
Yeah.
You know? You're actually listening, and then the roof moves, you know?
I know.
And, you know, so like you're lying there all night, like worried about like, where am I going to find 50 grand to pull off the end wall of my house? Is that going to be enough? What happens if it's not? I actually spent time going up around looking at sheds to move into, you know. And then I thought, well, there must be, like, this engineer said there's 50 people at least, right? So I thought, right, I'm going to have to find some more people like that have been through this, so they can advise me about this. And you say, did I call anybody? Absolutely. Like, that week, I picked up the phone to Clare County Council, and I was put onto their housing section. And I said to them, I got a clerk at the time, obviously one of the workers in there, and I said to him, I said, hello, like, you know, I said, this is my situation. I said, I've just had an engineer out, and he's told me I've got pyrite in my house. In the blocks, there could be mica, pyrite, as a, like, there's a grant above, and as a, like, there's a grant in Donegal. Like, I said, first of all, have you heard of this in County Clare? And the second of all, is there anybody in Clare County Council that can advise or help me on this? And this man said to me, he said, no, never heard of this before in County Clare. Never.
A dying a lie, go on.
And he said, no, he was a young man. I can't even remember who the young man's name was at this point. Like, and it was around, you know, it was in August at this point. He was going on his break, his holidays. And he said, look, I'll be away for whatever on my holidays. He said, I'll make a couple inquiries and get back to you. Of course, I'd never heard from him. Yeah?
Even today, he didn't get back to you up to today. So,
So what did I do after that? I thought, right, somebody sold me these blocks. I need to speak to a solicitor and see, like, what is my right. Yeah. So I rang a couple of solicitors in Clare, and I explained my situation. And they said, well, you bought the house secondhand. And I said, yes. I said, you don't have any block receipts? And I said, well, no. And he said, how long ago did you buy the house? I said, oh, at this point, like, it was 12 years.
Yeah.
So they said, well, under statute of limitations, like, you're covered by 6 years if you buy faulty products. You could actually go back and maybe try, but you're well out of your statute of limitations, and you've no receipts for the blocks, so you've no idea where the blocks came
from. I think that's not right. I think blocks are guaranteed for 35 or 40 years or something like that. I'd have to look it up, you know. Blocks themselves, now the building blocks, not the roof and all of that kind of thing, and foundation and all that. But I don't know. Look, that's either here. But you ran out of the road with the solicitor.
Oh, one solicitor's actually laughed at me. He actually laughed at me, and he said, when was your house built? And I said,
1995, yeah.
1995. And he said, oh, sure, that's ancient. Now, I was totally naive of everything at this point. Like, I was a very distressed homeowner listening to this, you know. And he said to me, he said, I have a young couple here who built their house in 2014. And I've been fighting the supplier of their blocks for the last 2 years. And they have receipts for those blocks. And he said, I'm getting nowhere with that supplier. And, you know, I have the company on the receipts and everything, but because it doesn't say on the receipts that it's blocks they bought, that supplier is pushing them through this procedure, which is incredibly expensive, pretending that they didn't sell them blocks. He said, good luck with you. Good luck with you trying with no receipts. So I thought, okay, well, he's going to be zero help to me. And if he thinks there's something to laugh about and be proud about, that he's been taken for 2 years fees off a young couple with a family and getting nowhere with it, and he thinks that's something to be bragging about, well, he's definitely not a solicitor for me.
They obviously would have no money because they're young, and they probably struggle to get the deposit, and they're put to the pin of their collar to put food on the table every day. It's a shocking state of affairs, you know. Shocking. You know, you don't really. Lair Confidential is the program here on lairmedia.tv. Press the red button on the right hand side to subscribe to our channel, and thank you for that. I'm with Dr. Martina Cleary of the Clare Action Pyrite Group, and you know, it's endemic what's going on in the country. You know, whole strata of society, of small communities and big communities, are left to fend for themselves at the most stressful time of their lives. You know, it's just unforgivable. You know, somebody has to take responsibility for it, you know. But unfortunately, that's not the case in this country. Right across the board, nobody takes responsibility for anything. If there's enough pressure put on them, they'll resign with a golden handshake. and they can walk off into the sunset. That's what's happening in all manner of businesses in this country, which is very, very unfortunate. But in your case, then, move on a bit now. Did you make contact with some other people in County Clare eventually?
Okay. Well, as I was saying there now, so knocked on the local authority doors, basically told, no, don't know anything about this. Went to the legal, looking at the legal avenue, told, don't think so.
No.
So then I thought, okay, the media, it must have been in the media here if there's anybody else. So I called the Clare champion, and I was very, very lucky that day now, Pat, that they put me on. I was very lucky that day. They put
Good.
a brilliant journalist called Fiona McGarry.
Fiona McGarry?
Fiona McGarry.
Fiona McGarry of Clare FM?
From the Clare champion.
And she was with Clare FM. I know Fiona.
Okay.
She's a brilliant producer on Clare FM, an absolute dynamo of a person. Anyway, go on.
So she said to me, I said, look, I'm just calling in. Did the Clare champion ever cover a pyrite house in Clare or any? And she said, no, Martin. She said, I've never heard of that. And she said, I know of it. And she started telling me about, she had experience of it. I think Fiona's from Mayo actually, and she'd known of it in Mayo.
Yeah.
And she was just, talking to me, and she said, look, she said, I'm really sorry to hear about your house. You're obviously, and I was about 2 or 3 weeks now at this stage into it, and she said, obviously you're going through incredible stress here. She said, if you feel like
it's still waiting for a phone call from Clare County Council, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I'll add as well. In the interim, I'd actually called I wouldn't have known as very normal person, like politics, TDs, councillors. Every few years, I'd look at a piece of paper with a picture.
Yeah.
Okay, who am I going to pick? What do these people? Who are these people? I had to find out and educate myself very quickly. Who are these TD people? I rang at least once or twice all of the offices of TDs of the major parties in the county, and left a voice message or left a message with the secretary. Could somebody please call me back?
Yeah.
Right. Did I hear from a single one of them?
No.
Not a word. Not a word. So then Fiona said to me, she said, look, she said, what I can do for you is, if you feel like you'd like to go public with this, she said, I can write an article for you and maybe you'll find other people that way.
Yeah.
And then she said to me, bear in mind now that engineer had been out of my house on the 10th of August. And we're looking at the end of August now, by the time I get to Fiona McGarry. And she said, but Martina, you'd need to send us in your engineer's report, because we just need to have a look at it. And I suppose for herself, she needs to be assured.
Did he give you a written report?
Yeah. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, Pat.
Good.
So I called the engineer and I said to him, he said he'd have it out into me in 4 days or whatever. Some 2 weeks later, I'm still waiting for the report. And I said to him, look,
you had paid him.
Are you paid on receipt of the report, or paid in advance of receipt of the report? So I'm waiting for it, right?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to remember back now exactly.
Yeah.
You had to pay him before you got the report.
Yeah.
So, I think the way he did it was he'd send out an email. The report is ready with the invoice. Pay it, and it'll be released.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, and you did.
But I was still waiting for it. So I just gave him a call and I said, look, can you please send on the report? So we sent on the report anyway, and I had a look at it and got it and paid for it. I think he charged me, was it 634 euros?
No. Did the report contain the word pyrite?
It contained the word deleterious material, which is the official word for defective blocks, suspected deleterious material / pyrite mica in the blocks.
Okay.
Right. Okay. And he gave me a category at the time as well. See, I didn't know about any of this stuff. I had to research it and understand it all. But he gave me a category 4, which is the worst category. It's the most damaged category within there. Yeah. So you get this report out and you're looking at it and you're going, oh Jesus, yeah. It's almost like, you're getting the worst designation you can possibly get, right? But I read the report, and what struck me straight away, I suppose like my background is I'm an academic, I'm a lecturer. I certainly would have led union campaigns before. I've read through other parts and areas in my life. Like I've been kind of social activist. I would be familiar with reading quite, like clauses and such
I
things.
mean, it wouldn't be a stretch for you to do that. Yeah.
So the first thing that struck me in that report was the opening paragraph, that this report cannot be used for any third parties and litigation, and
Why?
cannot be used in any other circumstances except by the client. So I just immediately, oh, right, I haven't seen this before in an engineer's report. Or maybe I wasn't looking carefully enough.
Oh, did you ring him back?
Oh, of course I did, because what he also told me on the day was, like, he said to me that he said it was just a visual inspection of the house he was doing, but he explained this kind of what he referred to as core testing. And he said that's the next stage that they go through in Donegal and Mayo, and it can cost anywhere between €6,000 and €10,000, right?
You understood from him. It was a visual report from him, a visual report, and he saw the cracks and things. That's all it was to you, and you paid him for it. So it's yours now to do what you like with it, because you paid for that service, I would think. Yeah.
Well, one would imagine so. But obviously, when a company puts in a clause into you take clauses like that quite seriously.
Oh,
because, a company has taken obviously some kind of legal advice. So you tend to read those things and we check.
Yeah, so you checked back with the man.
I got back with him because obviously I was going to go public, and I was going to hand over his report to Fiona McGarry to prove that, like.
But does your report now? You paid for it.
Yeah. And I said to him, I said, look, I'm going public with my story. I said, do you mind if I use this report? And do you mind if the article kind of refers to your company? And I thought, like, for any company, that's free advertisement, surely,
Well, it is, except you
have,
other
yeah. I mean, if there's anybody else in the county, and he'd already told me, like, he knew 50 houses, right? And he said to me, no, you can't do that.
Why?
Exactly. I was like, sorry, why? Sorry, why? He said, well, it's conflict of interest. And I said, what? What do you mean conflict of interest?
Of interest?
Yeah.
So you're not in the High Court now, or the Supreme Court?
Yeah, and a conflict of interest with whom?
Okay, and he said?
And he said, oh, well, I would have dealings with the supplier. My company would have dealings with the supplier.
So he's reported, and you said you paid for use of support to him?
Yeah. Well, first of all, how does he know who supplied the blocks in my house? I don't even know that.
Yeah. Did you? And what did he say?
Well, I wouldn't have been at that stage of the campaign, Pat. Like, I wouldn't have been that astute as to what's actually happening here.
No.
I would have just been like any other person and went, oh, okay, that's fine. you're going through the, like, stress trauma, and you're just about to go into the media with it. And you reach out to the engineer who's diagnosed your house and said, look, do you mind if I use your report? Is it okay if the journalist uses your name? Like, because your name's on the report. No, you can't use our name. It's a conflict of interest. I go, okay, right, okay. Our company is dealing with that supplier. And, like, you kind of, you don't, like, put, like, two and two together. Like, you don't, because, like, you don't.
Alarm bells will be ringing straight away.
Alarm bells will ring. And then I said to him, okay, that's fine. I said, I'll just show the report to the journalist so that I can prove that what I'm saying is real.
It's true, yeah.
Is true. We won't mention your company's name. And then, and then I said to him, I said, look, I'm trying to find other homeowners. I'm probably going to set up an action group just to find other homeowners. And I said, look, you said, like, other homes. And I said, I knew he couldn't. It's client, like, I'd be familiar with all of that as well. He couldn't tell me.
I mean, that was a given, that he wouldn't go along and give you Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Buckley and Mrs.
Yeah, of course not.
That is different.
Yeah. But what I said to him was, because, like, he seemed to be genuinely concerned, like, that he knew so many people and they were all suffering this. And I said to him, I said, look, I know you can't tell me who they are. That's obvious. But I said, could you let them know that I'm looking for people? I'm setting up a group. We're going to try and I said, I'm going to start a campaign to get the grant.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he couldn't do that.
Why?
No reason. At that point, you just kind of going, wow, okay, fine. You're being zero help to me. Okay.
Now, in the
Yeah.
meantime, Fiona was waiting for you
To give the report. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you told her this.
Yeah.
You
Oh
told her
no, I
this.
like at that point, like at that point you don't. There's too much happening. There's too much happening. Like you're sitting in a house that's you're in the worst crisis of your life.
Yeah,
You're looking for someone to help you,
yeah,
and you're getting every door slammed in your face. And like what I didn't realize was lies, 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 and lies, which I would only discover, as the
yeah,
campaign went on. And the person, like, you're looking for anybody at all that's going to give you even a little branch of hope, you know? And then you're also terrified about this because it's not only is your house like terminally ill, but it's like, what happens if you start telling people about it? Like,
mm,
what does that mean? What does it mean for you, for your mortgage? What does it mean for your insurance? What does it
yeah,
mean for trying to like do anything ever again with this property? Because you're
yeah,
going public with the fact your house is defective. And
absolutely.
the very first article, like I was terrified on so many levels, like everybody else is. And like Fiona said to me, she said, Martina, you don't have to say who you are. We'll do it anonymously. She said, at this point, like you're just looking for other people that are impacted. She said, we'll run an article, we'll keep it anonymous, we won't put a name on it. And she said, you said you want to set up a group. She said, give me an email and people can contact you.
All
So
right.
yeah, so the first article that went out, I think it was the 4th of September 2020, was homeowner in North Clare in living nightmare with structural defects. And my name wasn't mentioned on it. I set up literally the
But
week
did she
before.
refer to the fact that you had an engineer's report stating that fact as well,
Yeah.
with nothing else? Grand.
Yeah. So then the Clare Pyrite Action Group was born. And at that point, it was called the Clare Pyrite Mica Action Group because we didn't know what was in the blocks. We
Yeah,
just knew they were
yeah.
defective. So that went out, and within I'd say about 2 or 3 days of the Clare Champion going out that Thursday, I was driving home from work and I got a phone call from a lady called Geraldine Kennedy. Lovely woman. And she was absolutely fantastic. Like, and we were just chatting for about a couple of hours, and she said, look, come down. She said, come down and see my house. And so I went down a couple of days later in the weekend to Parteen. By God, Pat,
Go in.
Tony Gall didn't have that on her. Tony Gall didn't have that on her.
Oh,
The
geez.
house, like you'll see it, like, because Fiona McGarry, then I asked, like, went down to Geraldine, we chatted and met her and everything. She joined, I think she was the first member to join the Clare Pyrite Mica Action Group. And I asked her, I said, look, would you go public? And she said, I will. And Fiona did an article on her, and there's John Kelly came out from the Clare Champion, and he took a picture of Geraldine in front of her house, and he actually won an award for that photograph. But like, you'll see it was on the front of the Clare Champion.
Yeah.
And it was horrific, the state of the house, horrific. Now, like, Donegal didn't have anything on her. It was so bad,
Jesus, and
Yeah. Yeah. So the house was down Parteen. It was on a main road down Parteen, and they'd had many years of trying to figure out what it was,
and they got their reports as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
They paid for their reports out of their own
Yeah.
pockets
Yeah.
and got nowhere.
Oh, got nowhere. Got nowhere.
And
And they had
nobody, and all the doors closed.
all the doors closed, but also was kind of very unusual situation in the fact, like, that they'd had a number of reports and testing and everything done, and nobody had told them it was the blocks. Nobody had kind of put
Well,
2 and 2 together for them, and said it's the blocks,
the action group was born on, was it 4 years ago? 5?
It was born the 4th of September 2020. Yeah.
2020, we're coming up to
Yeah.
the 4th year now of it. Now,
Yeah.
as I alluded to start the program, of course, I was at the meeting, but now,
Mm.
4 years on,
Mm.
Martina, I mean, I was at the meeting, so I know some of the stuff, that some of the huge fences that were put in front of you that you had to jump over. Now, all you were looking for, and I don't mean that in a trite way, all you were looking for is access to a few bob to fix your houses.
Mm.
That's all. You weren't
Mm.
looking for the world. And 4 years down the road, there's no sign of that, is there?
Yeah, well, I suppose to frame it like for people that mightn't understand, I certainly wouldn't myself. I really wouldn't if I wasn't involved in this.
Yeah.
Like the premise of this is like we're not asking for anything. The premise is like we were sold a pup in a bag, you know. We were sold like any product on the market, whether it's a car or a TV or a cement block. We were sold something that was intrinsically defective, and it just happens to be every single cement block, like that makes up your house could potentially have it, right? And then suddenly you realize, well, actually, this is not only defective, like it's critically defective, and your house is eventually going to fall down on top of you. And not only that, like in the interim, it's worth nothing, and you're paying a giant mortgage for it, and everything you've invested in that, like your house. So obviously, you should be able to go back like any other product and say, look, something went wrong here.
Yeah, let's fix it.
Number one, like I want a refund. And number two is like, how the hell were these blocks allowed onto the Irish market? And then when you start realizing like, oh my God, like who's the company that was actually supplying the blocks in this area? Because in 2022, after 3 years of a very arduous campaign in which we were lied to, we were blocked, we were tried to be suppressed, the whole way through the story, like just trying to even get people to admit, and that includes the authorities, that this was going on and that this was real and that this is,
You had meetings with government committees and government departments, I mean, and how did you get on there?
Oh, I sat in meetings where people lied, like barefaced lied,
And they were challenged in their lies?
Oh, they were absolutely challenged, but it didn't matter. They lied anyway. And it's only when they were caught out lying, like by the production of visual evidence, But let's go back to like where, like after 3 years of an arduous campaign, in which the government, like what happened, Clare Pyrite Action Group lobbied hard. Like within the first 4 or 5 months, I had 25 people who contacted me, so I was no longer alone, and we started meeting, and we lobbied all of the Clare.
That was a bit of a comfort to you, surely.
Oh, it was. Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it would suppress the stress a bit. Your house is still the same, I know, but nevertheless, now we have a few people who are in the same situation as I am. He lobbied and lobbied. And who did you lobby? The minister and the Taoiseach and anyone else?
We the first move, I suppose.
Were the local TDs on board at this stage, no?
Like the first port of call, like we realised that once we did a bit of the investigation, that we'd have to get the Clare County Council to apply to the Department of Housing for the extension of the grant to the county. And to do that,
yes, it wasn't designated, yeah.
And to do that, you had to get the county councillors to raise a motion in the chamber, and for the county councillors of Clare to actually ask Clare County Council to write to the department. So we had to lobby all of the county councillors, and we did it fairly fast. And a letter went up fairly fast in that first autumn to the department to say, look, at this point now there was 25. I had interviewed 25 homeowners, and I had some basic data gathered on it to evidence it, and that there was a case for it.
Yeah.
So then the department came back down through the council. Obviously, the letter came down and said, right, we want Clare County Council to prove that it's in County Clare.
Okay.
So the obvious question after that is, okay, how'd you prove it? I said, oh, well, we want you to go out now, and we want you to do this thing called core testing.
Core testing on the 25 houses named.
On 5 houses. They told us that they wanted 5 houses core tested.
Sample of 5. Yeah, sample of
5. Yeah. So core testing is a very expensive procedure, and it was costing €7,000 per house.
Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, well, exactly. Who's going to pay for that? There's no grant. Like at the time with the older scheme, like the grant would have paid for it above and Mayo and Donegal to have it done,
Yeah.
So Clare County Council anyway said, okay, right, we'll pay for it. We'll pay to have it done. And then if you get a grant, if we do get a grant into the county, like they'd be reimbursed for it,
It's grand, yeah.
You know, so anyway, that procedure started in the spring of 2021, and we had 5 properties core tested, and that's a long procedure, like, you know, so they come out, they test, but it's the actual the results are sent away, and you're waiting months to get the results, you know. So within, I suppose, about 6 months, we had the results back, and they were definitive, and they were within, you know,
100%.
100%. We had pyrite on the block. It wasn't mica, it was pyrite, and it was also sulfates. Now, sulfates are very, very damaging to any type of concrete, whether it's block or foundations.
Yeah.
So, like, I had been extremely careful as well in my selection of who was going to do these testing. I suppose my academic background would have trained me like for like. So, like, comparative results, comparative tests, comparative testing company, comparative engineer, to meet standards that were comparatively accepted in another county.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the engineer we picked to do these had already done at least 200 of these reports, supervised it, and successfully secured funding for 200 houses in Mayo.
So he was a tried and tested guy. Yeah.
Tried and tested. And what he was doing was tried and tested and accepted by the department.
So he did all that.
He did all that. July 2021, those results went up. And we waited. And we waited. And we waited. And we were hearing nothing.
So July 21, the department had the definitive results for on the sample of the 25 houses. That
on 5 houses. 5 houses.
Yeah, the sample number, that it was definitively pyrite. And he heard nothing back.
Nothing back.
Now,
Nothing back.
at this stage, had any local representatives come on board with you? And
they'd spoken, like, you know, I don't know if you want me to name which ones did what and when, but we'll say the main TDs, like, would have at least between them at least once raised it in the Dáil between them all.
They were all aware of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Now
they were all aware of this.
So when did they come back to say, okay, Sunshine, we agree with you? I don't mean to be flippant.
They didn't.
They didn't come back.
Oh, they didn't. So what we did was, like, we were waiting and waiting. We were being, like, fobbed off, waiting, delayed. And meanwhile, our houses are rotting away. Our lives are on hold. You know, financial. We're into this now, like, about over a year of financial strain, worry, and duress at this point. And then we called another meeting. We called a big meeting down in Ennis, public meeting. We invited all of the TDs, all of the senators, county councillors, the whole lot of them, a big public meeting. And we asked them to explain what this delay was about.
Exactly. That's the only question that was there, because you could do nothing without the next step being taken. Yeah.
Yeah.
And why would the department dragging their heels? We all know why, you know.
Oh, yeah. So we listened, we watched, like, the spectacle of factional politics, like, with them all fighting with each other at the top table, trying to score points off each other. And eventually what came out was, Clare County Council had put in a bill for €80,000 to the department, and the department were questioning the bill.
For what?
For what? Like, sorry, wait, now we had 5 houses core tested, that's 35,000, so... Sorry, like, where did you get your bill for 80,000?
Yeah.
Administrative fees.
45,000 administrative fees.
10,000 administrative fees.
Was it gold? Was it solid gold?
They were digging for gold. Fool's gold. That's what pyrite is.
Yeah.
But, like, they were now Fiona McGarry did an FOI. She dug this out for us. The real gold.
I was going to say that. Did you get the invoice?
We got the emails to prove it, and she actually wrote about this in the Clare Champion. They'd put in a bill for the testing of 10 houses. They'd only tested 5. They'd initially promised us, like, the way this was going to go down was they test 5 houses from the private, and they test 5 of their own local authority houses, and the whole lot of them will go up in a report. in the same report. And this is what they were billing the department for.
But that had nothing to do with the county council side of work, was their own business. The 5 houses out of your sample was...
They didn't test the 5 houses.
Oh, jeez. Anyway.
Test,
so that was the bill. That was the 80,000.
Now, Pat, why didn't they test the 5 houses?
Obviously.
Because there's a certain supplier in this part of the world that would have supplied a tremendous amount of cement and concrete and aggregate and cement blocks for Clare County Council for a very long period of time.
They're not very far from where I'm talking to tonight, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyway, no.
And of course, Clare County Council would have all of the receipts. And of course, they'd know exactly where they bought their stuff from, because they'd have to. They're a government.
It has to be public knowledge. Anytime there's public money being spent, I know from working in the department, any public money, even for biros and notebooks and all, as small as that, has to be a paper trail. There has to be a paper trail. So you can never say, I never paid that, because it's just a paper trail there. Anyway.
Yeah. So isn't this amazing? Like, so you actually have the Department of Housing writing to Clare County Council, asking them to do 2 things: to quantify and qualify and prove. So quantify means count. Tell us how many houses are impacted in the county. Qualify what the problem is. Do core testing.
Now the testing is done, the results are out, and there's silence.
Yeah. And then we discover, like, okay, well, questions need to be asked here, you know. Why did they send a report up with only 5 private houses in it? Why were they not including any local authority houses as they initially said they do? Why were they putting in a bill for that much anyway? Why did a man called Benson, who would have been in the department at the time, asked for only 5 houses to be done, and absolutely assured, I'm told, Clare County Council that would be enough to prove the case for Clare? And then we do that, 35,000 is put on the table, the report goes up, it's perfect comparative quality and everything else. And he even did a comparative analysis later then to say this is identical to Mayo. Actually, it could have come from, it's so similar. It could have been the same quarry, but of course we know it wasn't. And then why is the department delaying for 6 months? And then the 6th of December, only after the public meeting, and again, a huge amount of pressure put on by Clare Pyrite Action Group on all of the local representatives and politicians, and going through the media and highlighting and telling people what's actually happening. We get a letter on the 6th of December saying, no, we don't accept these results.
And did they give the reason why?
No, this is very interesting. Like that letter, I've archived everything. What was coming back was like sheer nonsense, you know, but the nonsense that was coming back in it was sounding very similar, Pat, to things that I was hearing from my interviews with homeowners out on the ground in County Clare, who'd had certain representatives from a certain supplier in this region go out into their yard, not just once, but over the decades, and tell them that there was nothing wrong with their blocks. It could have been the driving rain. It could have been faulty render. It could have been
the foxes looking for a burrow, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Even one councillor had actually said to a homeowner, sure, it could have been the planes as they flew into Shannon, causing reverberations in the houses that was causing them to crack up.
And there are houses nearer to the runway than your one, way nearer that you could touch the planes on, and there's nothing wrong with them. Anyway.
Yeah.
Silly nonsense. But no, you're going into another year now, and
another year.
It's almost that you put back to square one again.
Yeah, but can you imagine the despair of that?
I can't imagine. I know what I do. I'd buy a shotgun and go up to the department and say, I want my money. But no, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Pat, you know, a lot of people, you know, when you're dealing with that kind of injustice and lies and subterfuge and suppression and gaslighting, you know, like people become either angry outwards, which is me, or they become angry inwards. And you're saying about like taking a shotgun. There's a few people like they would have taken a shotgun, a metaphorical one, and they would have done away with themselves. Not in this county, but in Mayo and in Donegal because of the years of this, right?
It's
Yeah.
just so debilitating for
Yeah.
this human spirit that you want to be very strong to
Mm.
stay sane and stay steady,
Mm.
and with the challenges of your own personal
Mm.
situation going to be totally different. I know I detected that at the meeting,
Mm.
some fine people, some worthy people, some fantastic people, but
Mm.
the the weighing down of this, the putting
Mm.
down of the injustice of it all
Mm.
is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
I applaud you and the people who are stood their ground in this and are still standing.
Yeah. Now, of course, they would have dug out in the interim, like footage of Darragh O'Brien, the Minister for Housing, when he was I think he was a TD at the time in his own constituency up there around Dublin. Him speaking about pyrite. This is 2012, so we're looking at what, 12 years ago, and speaking about pyrite around the country, and speaking about pyrite, his knowledge of pyrite in Clare. So then when he gets definitive evidence on the desk of his department, he's denying the
The
evidence.
existence of it, the evidence.
Yeah.
So, where did you go after that?
That was coming up to Christmas. We would have been in the campaign then over about 14 months, and we're coming up to Christmas. Can you imagine now coming into Christmas? And this probably sounds like it's like a story, because it is a story, but you've got to realize that the toll that it takes on the people that have had to lead this, like myself, Mary Hanley, Danny Maloney, Geraldine Kennedy, that are at the forefront of this, that have fought through this, that have done all the meetings, that have gone into the media, that have told their story, that have relived it every time they have to do this, is huge. It is human impact, And then to be told, you've done everything you possibly could. You've managed to lobby to get the government to look at this. You've managed to lobby to get 35,000 euros. Like, that's a miracle in itself, to test 5 houses. You've managed to secure an engineer that you know is not going to be compromised. You managed to secure testing in a particular place that you know is not going to be compromised. Because the other thing I was finding, Pat, was homeowners up and down County Clare over the years, and some of these people have actually died already, right? They would have had a certain company go out into their yard and tell them the sheer gall that there's nothing wrong with their blocks as the house is falling down around them. And then they would have done worse. They would have come out and taken blocks out of their houses and had sent them off to a Makia test that they were controlling a company, and sent back all of these reports. And so I've seen some of these as, inconclusive. There's nothing wrong with our blocks.
Yeah, don't I know? Jeez,
you
as
know,
you said there, Martina, and Patsy, that a few people who have passed on,
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. And like one lady, she was there, that God help her. She was there, and her son now has the property, and he's with us. But she'd been fighting that company for 10 years. 10 years. A widow on her own. The house starts crumbling. They send out, because she had her receipts, they sent out a fella in a van to take out a few blocks out of the house, and won't give her the results. Tells her there's nothing wrong with her house. She tries to put in a bit of her life savings in, and try and take them on legally. And what I was finding was this, she wasn't now. She passed away. She passed away at 70 years of age.
That's so desperately sad altogether. Desperately
Yeah.
sad. Being lied to,
Being lied to,
threatened, being intimidated,
put under,
lied again,
yeah,
intimidated again, and threatened again
yeah.
by that company.
Oh yeah,
it gets worse still.
yeah. A company, Pat, that is bringing in billions.
The government appointed.
Billions.
The government appointed a new authority, a new standards authority for buildings in this Republic of Ireland.
Mm.
I know how many people on that, 12 or 14 or 15, is it on that?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are 4 representatives from Roadstone on it.
Yeah.
4 representatives of Roadstone. Roadstone Limited. Limited is right. They should be very limited. And they are on now the new standards authority appointed by the politicians who are well aware of their defective blocks. It's like putting the foxes in charge of the hen house, as they say.
Oh yeah, it's putting the wolf back in, like let the wolf take care of the sheep.
When I heard that now at the meeting, and I knew from my own experience, small as it is, there's a lot of nefarious practices going on in this country. But I never thought I'd see the day when the very people who are causing the problems are on the committee for the new standards of building. I'd rather build an igloo, you know.
Yeah, like the insult of it, you know. But what was very interesting, Pat, like when you think about it, here we had from County Clare identically, scientifically precise results to what had been accepted up in Mayo for 200 houses. But the department's coming back and saying, no, this evidence for you guys, not good enough. Not good enough. No. What we're actually looking for from you guys is, let's see now, how difficult can we make this? Yeah. We'll tell them to go back, right? And to keep testing until they find a chemical reaction that is the width of a human hair, about a human hair, in a house of 6,000 blocks. Now, doesn't this sound like a really weird kind of nightmare? But that's exactly what they did. So they sent back this, what we want you to do is we need to see what they called was a causative link of the oxidation in the pyrite. And of course, like what I'm looking at this going, I'm not an engineer. What does this even mean? You know, what does it mean?
You were sent back to the drawing board.
We sent back, and like you're saying, okay, well, they're looking for something else now. So I rang up the engineer and I said to him, what is this? Like, what does it actually mean? And he said, well, I'll tell you, Martina. He put it exactly like that in layperson's terms, because he's an engineer and he's trying to explain it to a layperson. He said, Martina, what they've asked to do now, and they haven't asked any other counties to do this, I've never seen this before, but they're looking for a particular reaction in the block, and it's so tiny, it's going to be so hard to find. It would be like finding one blade of grass in Crowpatrick. It would be like finding something that is literally the width of a human hair in a house that could have 6,000 blocks in it. And he said, it's going to be so impossible and so expensive to find, we're never going to find it, right? And that's what they're looking for, to prove.
So the engineer said that obviously that's not possible.
He said, oh, it might be possible, but like he said, your house is going to look like Swiss cheese, because what we'll have to do, like, so when you do this core testing, it's literally, I've got a roll of sellotape here now. It's something about a borehole like that, a drill, like it's a long drill, and it goes through the walls of your house to take a sample out. And he said, we're going to have to keep boreholing your house like a Swiss cheese in the hope we're going to find this thing that they're looking for. So like if you make something so difficult, expensively or impossible to find, it's a good chance that people won't be able to find it, you know. And this is where that whole argument at the time was,
good chance that they won't do it.
They won't do it. They'll go away, right? Now, I think at this point, there'd been so much publicity and pressure put on by Clare Pyrite Action Group. Fiona McGarry wrote over 200 articles on this. We were in the Clare Champion nearly. I mean, if we were without Fiona, we'd have been lost. Fiona was a superstar. There was so much awareness growing about this in the county. And it was going beyond the county. Like, we got onto the Pat Kenny show, we got onto News Talk, we got onto the Irish Times, that it was very hard to push this, you know, secret back into the box that it was in Clare.
It was out.
You know, people were talking about it. So I think at that stage, the Clare County Council, like, they had a certain amount of egg on face, you know, like obligation and pressure, like, to try and do something about it.
Yeah.
But still, there was no mention of anything to do with properties of Clare County Council. So, like, in that initial report that went into the department as well, remember I said to you the Clare County Council were asked to do two things. They were asked to quantify, which is count, tell us how many houses are in the county, and qualify, test, show us what's in the block. Clare County Council did diddly squat about counting the amount of houses in the county. Clare Pyrite Action Group did that. We provided them with the details with under GDPR. I did all of the paperwork on that, and I approached all of our homeowners, and I made sure I actually wrote the paperwork because Clare County Council didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I did the template that the homeowners were okay with providing their details, that these people really existed and these houses really existed. And we mapped them for them. And we provided them at that point with 53 houses as evidence. Clare County Council put in two
houses.
Two.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah, on the map, a map went up with 50, I think there were 55 dots on it. Clare Pyrite Action Group put in 53 of those dots for them. Now, why were they not working on our behalf to help us quantify how many properties were to help the case, right?
And it's not that they're short of staff. There's 996 people working in Clare County Council.
Yeah.
Almost 1,000 people.
So here we are. We're in Christmas, the department 2021. Okay, what are we going to do? The department have sent back, go find this impossibly expensive and difficult thing and get back to us sometime whenever, like maybe the end of time, you know. You know. And so Clare County Council, we met with them again, and they said, we were like, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So then they said, all right, okay, well, we'll go into another batch of testing. And that was Christmas, December 2021. We met with them just before Christmas. I think it was 2 days before Christmas Eve. And they said to us at that point, I said, well, what are you going to do? Okay, all right, we'll get back to you in January, but we'll test your houses again. And like at this, yeah, to find this kind of chemical reaction if it's in your houses. So we came back to them in January. And then the story had changed again. And they said, okay, well, we're not going to test your houses. We're going to test our own houses. Right. And you're kind of going, well, okay, fine. Maybe it's a relief because I certainly don't want my house looking like a Swiss cheese. You know, it's bad enough as it is. But
so the county council said they test a batch of their own houses.
They tested a batch of their own houses and that then they went into this extensive. Now, I was told that the whole cost of all of the testing was over 110. It was over 108,000 sterling. So you're looking at 110, 115,000, right? And that's all of the testing together.
Yeah.
And they did 5 council houses. And so then we were called. That obviously that goes back into another period of months. You're waiting again.
Yeah.
So you're still waiting. And then that would have been, we're going to 2022 now, right? And we were called in. Eventually, the test results came back. We had a big meeting. TDs were at it, county councillors, council.
In Clare County Council offices, you met them with the local representatives.
This meeting was online.
And the results were definitive?
Definitive. Like there was definitive as the first ones, but like what they'd actually found, what they'd actually found and they'd gone for now was looking more at they discovered a thing called thaumasite, which is like a kind of another material that's produced when there's a lot of sulfur in the block, and like thaumasite, it's kind of like, to put it in layperson's terms, it's like your block is going to muck. It's becoming muck.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It could, yeah.
Yeah. So then, you know, we now had found this impossible thing they were trying to find. You know, 100,000 euros more in testing, drilling into council houses.
No, the county council were now in the same frame as you were, so therefore their next move would be to send this off to the department and get the grant, get the money sorted.
Yeah. But I suppose what was kind of interesting around this time as well, Pat, was, you know, Clare Pyrite Action Group were putting on a quite a campaign as well of like evidence of buildings, not just the buildings that we knew about, like amongst the homeowners, but like we have homeowners that are in 6 Mile Bridge, Shannon, Drumline, Kilkishen, Partine, Kilrush, Kilkee, Ennis. They were coming into the meetings and saying, well, I'm living in a housing estate. If you want evidence of this, I'm in a housing estate, 170 houses. I can point 5 or 6 of them. The gable ends are rotten, right? Do you want me to take some pictures for you? I've got plenty of evidence for the government that there's pyrite in Clare. So we were actually saying, okay, send us in your pictures. So we were doing the social media campaign, and there was pictures coming in from all around the county, and pictures were coming in of housing estates.
Oh, good. Excellent.
You know, and these were, now something else very interesting happened as well. Like one of the homeowners, she was down in well, actually this has actually happened in 2021 when the first report was going up. But when I was doing the survey on the 53, I was talking to one of the homeowners, and he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, I was just at my children down there at the marina in Kilrush, and he said, my God, he said, the dressing rooms there, he said, the dressing rooms in the building, the marina building, he said, the whole place is rotten with pyrite. He said, it's all cracking up, it's in a terrible state. And I said to him, like, I mean, at this stage now, I'd seen so many buildings in pyrite, like, I was like, oh God, just another one. Like I said, send me in
take a photograph. Yeah,
take a photograph, send it in. But Pádraig McMahon, I was having a chat with him from the Clare Echo, because he'd always ring and say, what's going on? He said, come here, do you know any public buildings? And I said, well, actually, I just heard from a homeowner, and I said, I've heard there's a big one down in Kilrush. I haven't had a chance to go down and look. Pádraig went down, and he was on the front of the Clare Champion. He did a bit of digging, and he discovered that the marina down in Kilrush, a grant had been put in by Clare County Council, he said, for 4 million for that building to renovate it or something. And I'm going, wait, hang on a second.
Must be a big building.
Surely that there's a huge building down there, and that would have been good evidence for Clare County Council to put into the report that there's pyrite in Clare. Like, why was that not included when we were trying to quantify? And like, if I'm understanding this correctly, they had some kind of simultaneous grant in on it. And then a little bird, a little TD bird, rang me up and said, now, Martina, I'll tell you a story. And he said, I won't tell you who, but somebody high up in Clare County Council had said to him, oh yeah, well, the application for that is in, and at least we don't know for sure there's pyrite in it. So somebody senior in Clare County Council knew or suspected that there was pyrite inside in that building.
Of course, you'd want to be a fool, not if, as you said, if you look at it visually, you don't need to be an expert in every facet of building to know that there's something seriously down here, you know. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, one of my homeowners she lives down there.
Right.
She drives past that building every day. And she said to me, she said, I'm really annoyed by this, actually. She said, we've been denied help really here now with this. We've been told by the department that the results are not good enough. Clare County Council has done pretty much nothing when it comes to testing their own properties.
Yeah.
And they were asked to actually evidence it in Clare. And here you have a building that we're being told that Clare County Council is not only aware of, but they put in a grant application for 4 million on it. And she said that building is rotting, Martina, with pyrite. So I brought it up, or she brought it up actually in a meeting when there were two TDs, or sorry, there was a TD and two politicians in that meeting with Clare County Council. And she said, has that building been tested? Has Clare County Council tested that building?
In Kilrush?
Yeah. And like, why didn't you test it and include it in your evidence to the department? Yeah. And at that meeting, we were told, oh no, that building hasn't been tested. So do you know what I did, Pat?
No.
The very next day, I drove down to have a look at that building because I hadn't seen it. And do you know what I discovered? That building was not only tested, it was tested up to the 3rd floor. There were boreholes all over the building.
You got your little camera?
Yeah. And I recorded the whole thing, put video up, went into the paper. Pádraig McMahon picked it up again. So we've been absolutely lied to.
So Pádraig McMahon picked up that with the visual evidence in Clare Echo, and did Clare County Council say anything about it?
Well, do you know what? Clare County Council then admitted that.
But they said at the meeting that it hadn't been tested.
They said, oh no, that hadn't been tested. No.
Yeah.
No. And it was actually at that meeting as well now, because I recorded that meeting. At that meeting as well, when that item came up, certain people were so nervous about that item being raised that I also raised at that meeting. Now, how many of your own stocks and share and holdings, how many of your local authority properties actually have pyrite that you're aware of? And then they said 350. I think said 350 at that meeting.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's astonishing. And this is just go on.
Yeah. So
Jeez.
yeah. So like that meeting was quite a tough meeting, right? So it took raising a property where they had put in an application for 4 million and denied that it had been court tested. It took that conversation for them to actually admit in that meeting that they were aware that it was I'm trying to remember, was it 250 or 350, because it went onto the front of the Examiner as 350.
Of their own properties had pyrite, and yet you were being denied. I wanted
They hadn't included it, Pat. Like they had not included it in any report to government.
That's a sacking offence for the CEO, surely.
And after that meeting, who was in that meeting? A number of TDs. And after that meeting, I remember both the Clare Champion and the Clare Echo, the journalists, called me and said, "How did your meeting go?" And I told Fiona and I told Pádraig how the meeting went. And they said, "Wait, whoa, did they finally admit that they have it in their own?" And I said, "Yeah." And I think it was 250 or 350. I can't remember now straight off. Like, because I think the Examiner, the way that I'll explain why I can't in a minute. Like, let's say it was 250. And they said, "Did they actually admit it?" And I said, "Yes, they admitted it." And I said, "You need to print it. You need to print it. You need to put it now on the front of the Champion, because they've been hiding this." And then they had to wait. They had to write in and get it. And I said, "You can call Crow. You can call Timmy Dooley." They were in the meetings. They heard the number. And Fiona called and Pádraig called, and I said, "How did you get on?" They couldn't quite remember the number. I didn't matter. Pat, I have a recording of that meeting.
But they did admit to them, I presume, that there was a number of public buildings with pyrite.
Yeah. And then finally it went into the Champion, and the Irish Examiner picked it up. It was on the front. It was 650 houses, I think, that the Clare Champion the Irish Examiner put on the front, because I think they counted 350. I think they contacted the council, and it must be around 350. And then we knew as well from our own houses in the housing estate, so they had a number, you know. But it took, you're talking about now nearly 2 years, right? You're talking about a department that had denied it. You're talking about a county council who had pretended that, like, they didn't include any figures at all, right? So of all of those 200, 350 houses that they were suddenly counting, why didn't they admit it? Where are the receipts? Where are the receipts for all the blocks for those? Yeah.
Being a public body, and even when he went with the first, the Pyrite Action Group, they already had knowledge that there was hundreds of buildings with pyrite in Clare anyway. And he were put through all the hoops of expensive reports and all the sham of that, and being turned down by the department. So here you are in 2023, is it?
Yeah.
Last year.
2022. 2022. And it was only the sustained, like, campaign of the constant, every week media. I think one day I did 8 interviews in the media. You know, now the wear and tear of that on anybody.
No, and you have to be alert and sharp, as I know myself, and with it, and not to come across as confused or uncertain. You know, the way these things can come across to people. So it is very, very challenging. Very challenging.
Yeah.
You know?
So then I also ran an international conference that May, and I broadcast that as well with the research findings. At that point, I'd interviewed 90 homes, 90 homeowners, and I had data to put up there evidencing
Yeah.
locations, dates, the period that this is covered, the supplier, put that out there. And that was online. Yeah.
Did some of the householders, were they relatively new, fresh houses? I mean fresh, I don't mean
Yeah. So the period you're looking at, like the earliest house that I visited and interviewed was 1974. And the latest, or the most recent, was 2014.
And the same supplier of blocks?
Yeah.
It's astonishing. It's a mortal sin. It's unforgivable. As a local authority, any local authority, we're not blaming Clare alone, there's loads of them around the country, continue to use the same 1 or 2 or 3 suppliers with evidence to support them of their defective blocks, and yet they handed out thousands and thousands and thousands of euros in public money to these people. It beggars belief, Martina, beggars belief.
Oh, yeah.
Once I presume have signed contracts with that company still.
Oh, I don't know, but I mean, if you're looking at the biggest supplier in the country, Pat, like you're kind of in a bit of a bind, like if you've got a monopoly going, that's the problem.
The problem with this country, as you know, Martine, I don't have to tell you, you're in it long enough like myself. It's endemic in Irish society. I hate saying it. I hate putting down my own country, my own fellow people. It's endemic, whatever branch you look at. Insurance, you look at the branch, it's a cartel. There's no banking industry in Ireland. None to talk about, None. We have a small population, 5 million people, with 15 government departments. We have 26 county councils, 15 government departments to run an island of 5 million people. The Greater Manchester area has nearly 4 million people, 3.8 million, with one authority. I'm not saying there isn't corruption there. I'm just saying it's endemic. It's endemic. And
so, and that company SLR, like I was, like, cause,
and are they based in Ireland?
Oh yeah. And like they're also on that. There's representatives from SLR on your new IS 465 standards committee that the government have put in place, like to look at the standards of the blocks that are in these houses that have been built by the company it's representing. Even naming this company, Pat. This company is like what I found as well. Like, I'm just an ordinary human being, an ordinary person, an ordinary home.
You met government agencies and agencies of the government, all of that. Name of that company, and one of them is Roadstone. I don't mind saying it, and they know they are themselves.
Yeah, Pat. Well, Pat, what can happen to you now if you decide to leave that name in this interview is that the largest legal firm in this country can send you a letter to sue you, right? Because they're represented by the largest legal firm in this country.
Probably McCann Fitzgerald, who get all the government contracts anyway.
And like I have politicians, like my experience over the last like 3.5 years is politicians will not name them outside of Dáil privilege and protection.
Right. But you met them, I won't say name anymore, but you met them, and did they acknowledge that company that when you were seeing what about themselves? Were they at the meetings?
In meetings, like which meetings now? Meetings with public meetings,
No, in meetings with government committees and stuff. I presume the builders were represented.
No. Oh God, no. I've never been in the meeting with any of the representatives of that company.
Yeah.
No, they're a hidden entity. They're a hidden entity.
It's no secret because it's in the media. It's no secret. It's
not in the media, Pat. And this is a big problem. Like in
the media, I remember reading it in I won't mention the newspaper in case at the end, but I remember reading it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you now, like in the 3.5 years of the campaign, I have been shut up
Have the company, have the name, has the name of the company ever been mentioned in Clare County Council by councillors or anything like that?
Never. And I've been warned, like at the very beginning of this campaign, like when I go on to any local radio, when I go on to even national radio, I was warned to not name them. You
Why?
can't name them
Why?
because they're afraid of litigation. Yeah.
But sure, the people who have receipts from them with the defective blocks can sue them.
Well, I'll tell you a little story now, Pat.
Why don't they sue them?
Why don't they sue them? Because there are, and like you're hearing stories like from different counties. I know of a case in Tipperary. Won't go into too much detail of it now, but I'd say it's somebody now that you would say would have the wherewithal and the legal expertise to be able to go after them, and a filing cabinet of paperwork on it. But what actually happens is this company has such deep pockets that it drags people through a legal process for up to a decade and bankrupts them. And if they push it far enough, like they'll probably settle with them on the steps of the High Court. You know, I was encountering stories like from the very beginning of this campaign of, you'd go out in the field, and again, I keep saying to you, like, just I'm an ordinary woman, like I'm an ordinary homeowner, like.
Okay, I'm not going to embarrass you, Martina, to blow my own, and I'm not going to put you on the spot.
NDAs,
Has there been any questions asked at any meeting from any of the public representatives or officials about this company?
I'll tell you now, Pat, when the company was named, which stage in this, it was named by me. And it was on the first testimony that I gave to the Joint Oireachtas Housing Committee in June 2022. We had just, July 2022. It had just been announced that the grant was going to be extended to Clare. And in the testimony I gave, under certain privilege of protection under the Oireachtas Committee,
you're in dual privilege, and once you're in the committee,
And after that, it was almost like once I'd named them, then Matty McGrath picked it up and he mentioned them and he questioned it in the Dáil. Michael McNamara picked it up and he named them in the Dáil chamber, and it's there on the record. And the questions were asked like, why are they not being pursued? Why? Like, yeah. But like, there's no response. It falls on deaf ears. The conversation goes dead. There's no follow through. When Dara O'Brien came down to County Clare and he met with the Clare Pyrite Action Group in July 2021. He was down in Clare and we asked to see him. And on the day we brought him out to a house down in Drumline, Mary Hanley's house, and it was all over the papers. And it was asked, like, the homeowners were there. We had about 30 members of the group, and there's loads of documentation of this. And it was asked, like, why aren't you pursuing? Why aren't you pursuing, this supplier? And he was going to speak to the Attorney General, and we'd be looking at this. And waffle, and more waffle. And we get the same from certain politicians, that, oh yes, a case has been opened, a file has been opened, of course. No. Nothing has been done. And not only has nothing been done, but you're looking at the new panel that's been put together to examine the standards for the examination of all these houses that are impacted in County Clare. And you have 4 representatives of the interests of that company sitting on that panel.
Now, Martina, we're an hour and a half chatting, which is great. I think it's great for people who will be looking at this later. And we'll have to go back for the part 2. But I mean, I have the advantage of being at that meeting in the Oakwood, so I can see the background myself. But for people who will be looking in, if they want to contact you, I think will we put up a link to your email?
Yeah, Clare Pyrite Action Group.
And we put up your email. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, Martina, I mean, I could listen away again, but I mean, people who want to see this program, we want them to watch it as well. So we don't want them to fall asleep.
I know. It's like, it's a long story. Yeah.
I mean, just brilliant. You took the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us here on their media. And as I said, we'll share it on all our platforms and we'll make sure it'll get out to as many as we can We'll send it on to you, and
Yeah.
people, make sure you tell people, whatever, they're free to disseminate it wherever they like. We're not putting any copyright on it, wherever they like, if that's all right with you. And we'll come back to it again. There's no doubt about that, because this is not going away. But from Dr. Martina Cleary, and from myself, Pat Barry, and from all the people here on Their Media and on Their Confidential, Martina, until we meet again, take care. God
Thank
bless.
you. Bye. Bye. Bye.